Entire towns and villages are to be encouraged to generate power for the national grid. The government is to offer cashback incentives to get people to produce power through a combination of wind, water and solar energies. The plan's due to be unveiled on Wednesday, but ministers have admitted that it could lead to higher energy bills for us all. Here's our business correspondent, Joe Lynham.
At community housing projects on London's South Bank, they know a thing or two about renewal and renewables.
These buildings use solar power for their hot water. The cisterns are full with rainwater and the lights switch themselves off when there's no one else around. If they've any surplus electricity after generating for themselves, that goes back into the national grid, potentially at a profit. And it could be a model for towns and villages up and down the country very soon.
The government calls them feed-in tariffs or clean energy cashback, and it's going to encourage small communities to generate a lot more of their own green electricity. But these renewable projects need subsidies, and one estimate reckons that that could add up to £230 annually to an average family bill.
There are upward pressures on prices, yes.
Yes, the answer is yes.
And my job, as I say, is to counter them. Stronger regulation, giving people a chance in terms of energy efficiency and giving them the right help to do that, and also helping the most vulnerable, and that's what I'll be talking about next week.
The energy giant npower already has 800 customers exporting back into the grid, and it reckons that solar panels could provide more than half of household electricity needs. And its rivals British Gas also see renewables as a good source of future income.
The sources of revenue for energy companies, particularly a company like British Gas, are not just simply from selling electricity and gas to customers. As I say, we see it as a very exciting business opportunity to be the trusted company working alongside householders and businesses, helping them understand what's right for them.
The government's renewable energy strategy has the tough task of encouraging companies as well as communities to each do their bit to combat climate change, whilst at the same time share in the financial pain. Joe Lynham, BBC News.
Well, 2 years ago, Bob Hughes bought a home in the Midlands that was built in 1703 and needed lots of renovations. As well as roof repairs, he also had solar panels installed, which now provide around a third of the energy he uses. And Bob joins us from our studios in Birmingham. Thank you very much for your time this evening. How much did all of that work cost you?
Well, the solar panels themselves cost about £10,000. But remember, we were having to replace the roof anyway, so it's probably a little less than that for the total cost.
And did you get any grants towards the cost of that?
Yes, the government were doing a grant at the time, which is about £2,500. So again, even cheaper. So it'll be pay for itself a lot quicker.
Well, my next question, indeed, how long will it be before those panels actually start to pay for themselves?
Well, it partly depends on the announcement the government makes on Wednesday, I guess. At the moment, it's probably going to be about 12 or 13 years, but if that feed-in tariff comes in at the rate that we're expecting, probably about 6 years. But I think you have to say it's not the reason why we did it. We weren't looking at a payback period particularly. It's just something we've chosen to spend our money on. You know, if you buy a new sofa, you don't sit there every time thinking, well, we've got to use this sofa more, so it costs us 10 pence instead of 20 pence every time we sit on it. It's what we've chosen to do with our money.
For some people, though, that's a very significant outlay. And do you think that what the government is planning to announce is enough of an incentive to get people hooked into this scheme?
Well, obviously, it's not going to work for everybody, but if it encourages more people to do what we've done, then it's the right thing to do. It has to be seen as part of a wider energy strategy that the government has, where hopefully they'll also be encouraging us to use less electricity as well as finding other ways of producing electricity in the first place.
But do you think that in general terms, although the details of the costs have yet to be worked out, do you think that there is that enthusiasm out there amongst people to get involved?
I think there is. I mean, there's a lot of people like myself who've been interested in the environment all their lives and want to know what they can do. If we can do something locally to generate electricity rather than having to rely on nuclear energy, which is kind of going to be bad for the environment and bad for the long term, then it has to be something that we should be encouraging people to do.
And for yourself, is there anything more that you can do to generate a surplus of electricity that you could potentially sell to the national grid?
Well, what we've done is we've insulated the home thoroughly as we can. We've also installed a ground source heat pump, so we're kind of getting energy out of the ground that way. And we may one day be looking at wind turbines, but at the moment the solar is probably producing between a third and a half of our electricity, which is great. I think there's always been this myth, hasn't there, that there's sort of a trade-off between saving the planet and doing something economically efficient. Well, I think this shows that locally we can do that, and also if the government chooses to encourage some of the companies that are trying to set up with alternative technologies, some great ideas that are out there, then that would also be a good way to be spending our money as taxpayers.
OK, Bob Hughes, thank you very much.
My pleasure.